or we just post our recording. So again, I'm Shibe Jones. Welcome. We are going to go ahead and get started. So this is Pathways to Teaching. And today we are going to talk about just all the different ways that you can become a teacher. So with that, I just want to give you a little bit about who we are, because it's always helpful when you have a context for who's presenting to you and why and how are they even the expert on that information. So teacher effectiveness and preparation is housed out of SDCOE, the San Diego County Office of Education. We work in human resources. The county office actually has Corton Community Schools. We serve 42 districts in the county, 780 schools, 500,000 students, and over 120 charter schools. So we provide supports not only with our own schools, which are those Corton Community Schools, but we also support all these other entities, as well as we partner with the 5 community college districts here in San Diego County. So I'd like to take just a second, and you can type in the chat, or since we're such a small group, you're welcome to come off and introduce yourselves, although I am recording, so perhaps you do want to type it in the chat. Since that doesn't go up on the recording, but I'm really curious to know who we have in the room in terms of why are you here? So do you have certain information that you're hoping to walk away with today? So just type in the chat what you're hoping to come away with as a result of this session, or what questions you want to make sure are answered before you leave. And maybe the benefit or the drawback of being a small group is I see all of you. So I know if you're participating or not. Okay, Irma. As a SET, I'm not sure what SET is. Student teacher?
It's a classroom assistant.
Okay.
Special education technician.
Gotcha. Thank you. Okay. We have a master's degree, credential, single subject math. Yes, thank you, Carrie, for reminding them that there's no pressure to ask questions, but it helps us to just have a context of who's in the room.
I'm not gonna type, I'm just gonna talk.
Sure, go ahead.
My name is Deyanira Mitchell, and I currently work as a preschool teacher by my school district at Cajon Valley. I start sending messages the need of having teachers, and that's one of the things that I wanted to do for a long time. And they contact them and they send me the information, and they send me the information for the internship for the early childhood credential program. And I'm hoping that I start that program maybe on the fall because I need to pass the CBES first. And I would like to have my master's in special education, but for early childhood education.
Perfect. Thank you. That's great information. And
Yes.
It's very possible that the early childhood special ed credential that was recommended to you is right out of our shop, because we have an intern program, which we'll talk about. I'll make sure to touch on that, knowing that you're in the room as well as Irma, because we do have an intern program. So our objective today is to just make sure that you understand what all your options are for becoming a teacher, and also know the steps to attaining your teaching credential. So we will take some time to go over all of that today. I want to talk about alternative and traditional pathways to teaching. Because there are two different ways you could go about, actually three different ways you could go about getting your credential. You have alternative pathways and you have traditional pathways to becoming a teacher. So the alternative pathways are where you get a teaching position first, and then you go through, you get your credential and you go through a credential program. And then that would include things like a career technical education credential, an intern teaching position. Those would be your alternative pathways. So the pros to an alternative pathway is that you get your credential while you're being paid at the same time. And as you're being paid, that you're paying into the state teacher retirement system. So you're paying into your retirement and you have access to health benefits. The cons, and it all depends on each of our personalities and what we see as pros and cons, but the cons could potentially be that you're learning as you're going versus you learn everything first about teaching and then go into teaching. So like for Irma and Dianetta, since you both have experience in the classroom, an alternative pathway may be a little, that con of learning as you go may not be as big of a concern because you kind of already know what to expect. You've been in the classroom. Now, another con could potentially be that you may not have access to financial aid depending on what program you go through. So if you get your CTE credential, that would be through a county office like ours, or if you went through our intern program, you wouldn't have access to financial aid. With that being said, we have really low cost programs. Now, an intern program, you could go through a university and you would have access to financial aid. So let's talk about the traditional pathway. Traditional pathway is exactly the opposite of the alternative pathway. You take your courses first, then you go through student teaching. And remember, student teaching is a course, so you're paying to student teach because that's a course, and then you attain your teaching credential. Once you get your teaching credential, then you can go ahead and get a job. So the pros of that include just getting all that support and knowledge prior to entering the classroom, and traditional programs are all through universities, so you'd actually have access to financial aid. The con is you're not getting paid, and that can be a huge con, especially when you're paying to student teach. Maybe with courses, not a big deal because you can still have a job, but you really have to put your job on pause while student teaching because that's during the school day, unless if you get a job where you're working in the evenings and weekends.
You have a question in the chat pod.
If I secure a scholarship, can these be applied towards an internship? Irma, it really depends on the what the scholarship condition, what the conditions of the scholarship are. So if the scholarship allows you to use those funds for, say, a like a SDCOE based internship, that's great. I know that as a our department, we also work with some grants like the Classified Employee Teacher Recruitment Grant, which is something that I know San Diego Unified participates in. So if you are a classified employee, you have access to this grant, and it's about, ooh, I better not say the number because I'm not sure. It's either $1,500 a semester or or 1,500 a year. Don't quote me on that, but you can email me later and ask me. But say it is up to $3,000 a year. Well, our internship program is $5,000 a year. So it would cover a good bit of that cost. So a few things to keep in mind before we get going is that there are certain examinations that are required by the CTC. You have the CBEST. Now there is an equivalent to CBEST that may count in the place of CBEST. Oops. I have a haunted mouse that likes to move my screen. Sorry about that. There's also the subject area examination, CSET. So if you're going into elementary school, you would take the multiple subject CSET. Alahe, for someone going into secondary math like yourself, you would take the CSET for math. If you're going into special education, you could take any of the CSETs. The state also requires that you complete U.S. Constitution and Health. And normally if you have a bachelor's degree, we can usually find that in your transcript. And then a certificate of clearance, which is the fingerprinting clearance through the Department of Justice and the FBI. Okay, so those are a few of the just basic things that I wanted to make sure that I cover, because everybody has to do these things. And then we're going to split off into the pathways. I don't think anyone's in these situations, so I think I can skip that. Well, no, the second question about AA versus BA versus master's degree, does it matter? If you are going into an alternative, wanting to teach career technical education, for instance, it requires a high school diploma, which we'll talk about. Whereas if you're getting a teaching credential, you do have to have a bachelor's degree. So actually, let's just jump right into CTE. So career technical education, these are programs that specialize in specific trades, applied sciences, modern technologies, and really career preparation. So you see this mainly in high schools, and there's actually, it's a pretty robust program, CTE is. So if you were to go into EdJoin, for instance, and apply for a CTE position, you would actually see CTE in there. And if you remember, this is one of the alternative pathways. So you're learning to teach while you're teacher of record, and you're earning your salary and your health benefits and paying into retirement. So thinking, Elahe, again, this might apply to you since you're going into math, maybe it'll apply. If you have industry experience, you might want to consider CTE as the alternative pathway. And I'll talk about the whys and the why nots in a minute. This is a very tiny screen here that you probably can't see. So Carrie put this poster in the chat for you to look at. But what I did was I just highlighted a couple pieces from the poster just to give you an example. There may be a high school that has a pathway for arts, media, and entertainment. So if you have industry experience in any of these four pieces here, you can get a credential in arts, media, and entertainment, a CTE credential, and teach in a CTE classroom. So the idea here is we want to take industry and bring it into high schools so that we can prepare students for professions, for industry sector jobs, whether or not they're going to a four-year university. You also have health science and medical technology. So if you have any of the experience listed here, that's the CTE credential that you would get. So if you say have a background in finance, then you might be able to get a CTE position where you're teaching mathematics. And I should say, if you have any questions along the way, please type them in the chat. I am more than happy to pause and answer the questions, which is why Carrie is here too, because she's here to answer questions. So the minimum requirements for a CTE credential is 3,000 hours of industry experience or 3,000 hours of industry experience combined with education, along with a high school diploma. So this is one of those credentials where before you have a credential, you apply for the job. And once you get the job, then the employer will help you get your CTE credential. And then from there, you start to take courses. The coursework, SDCOE offers it. It's about 12 weeks of coursework and 2 years of teaching with mentoring that goes along with it. So let's talk about intern teaching positions. Areas like special education, math, science, bilingual positions, those are high need areas. So these high need areas means that they're typically hard to fill. And when they're hard to fill, districts then can turn around and hire an intern if they're unable to fill those positions. And Carrie, I'm going to let you type the answer to the question about if you hold a CTE certificate in another state. Oh, you're already doing it. Okay, thank you. So again, as an intern, you're learning to teach while you're a teacher of record. You're earning your salary, you're paying into retirement, you have access to health benefits. The minimum requirements for becoming an intern is you have to have your bachelor's degree, you have to pass the basic skills exam, CBEST or its equivalent, subject matter competency, which would be CSET or its equivalent. And then you also have to take some pre-service coursework. This is typically 2 to 4 classes that you would take. For example, at SDCOE, we have pre-service. It's roughly 10 to 12 weeks of coursework that you take. So once you pass the exams and you take the pre-service courses, you're what's called intern eligible. Now, when you become intern eligible, then you can go to item number 3 here and apply for teaching positions. When you apply for the teaching positions, once you were hired, then the program that you go into for your credential, the credentialing program, will apply for your intern credential. So you will have an intern credential. You teach for 2 years in that school while you're taking coursework and you're receiving mentoring, both at the site level, as well as the program has a practicum supervisor who comes out a couple times a month and observes you and gives you feedback and just provides guidance. So once you complete the program, then you get a preliminary credential, and that is that. Okay, so the traditional pathway is postgraduate work. So that involves taking your coursework, you do your student teaching, and then you become a teacher. The minimum requirements are a bachelor's degree, your CBEST, your CSET, And then you apply to a university, you take the coursework, you complete student teaching, depend on the university that you go to. It could be anywhere from 6 to 12 weeks of student teaching. I'm sorry, 6 to 16 weeks of student teaching. And then you attain your preliminary credential. Once you attain your credential, then you can start applying to teaching positions. So what if you already have a credential and you're looking to teach something different? So if you already have, this doesn't apply to CTE, but say you have a SPED credential and you really want to go into high school math, you would take methods course through a university, you would take the CSET, and we actually offer CSET preparation. Actually, this is if you're, sorry, single subject teacher would be if you're already a high school teacher, like say you have a high school math credential and you want to teach elementary school, then you take a methods course and pass the multiple subject CSET. So we offer test preparation for all those CSETs. Now, flip-flop for multiple subject elementary school teacher, they would pass the CSET in whatever subject area that they're wanting to teach in, and then take a methods course through university. And again, we offer CSET prep. CSET prep is 100% online. It's asynchronous and it's available for 3 months at a time. Is that right, Carrie? 4 months at a time. Thank you. Now, if you want to teach special ed and you already have an elementary school teaching credential, a multiple subject or a single subject credential, then you would want to either enter into an intern program or a university program. The thing is, if you already have a credential, you're intern eligible, so you don't have to do those pre-service courses. And I do believe, depending on the program that you go through, they may actually waive a couple of other courses for you. Now, substitute teaching. I want to make sure that I bring up substitute teaching. If you have the ability to substitute teach, it requires a bachelor's degree, CBEST or equivalent, and fingerprinting. And we have a tremendous amount of support through our credentials office. You notice here in the image on the left, well, first of all, the door on the right, substitute teaching is a good way to help you get your foot in the door. And the theater stage, it's also a good way to audition for a teaching position. So that may be an option as well. Before I go further, I do want to say, I've had people ask, what should I do? Should I get a CTE credential? Should I take the traditional route? Should I do the intern route? I would say traditional or intern really depends on what works for you. Traditional or intern would get you either a single subject credential to teach high school, a multiple subject credential to teach elementary, middle, or a SPED credential. Okay. CTE is mainly secondary, maybe middle school, but it's mainly high school. And here in San Diego County, what we see is you have some CTE positions that are full-time contracts. You have other CTE positions that are hourly and part-time. I think if you qualify for a CTE credential, it's another great way of getting your foot in the door. But if your intention was to get that single subject credential, I would continue working on the single subject credential. My little soapbox, my personal opinion. So our website, oops, I'm I'm going crazy again. Sorry about that. Our website actually has all sorts of information about our credential programs as well as test preparation. So feel free to check it out. I actually, oh, there you go. Carrie put the link in the chat there for you. And I'm going to skip this one here and just go straight to if there are any questions. I forgot to change this last slide. This is not Adina, this is Carrie Morgan, but my contact information is there as well as our Twitter handle and a shortened link to our website. So if you have any questions, feel free to take yourself off of mute to ask, or you can type away in the chat. And Irma, I'm just going to come back to you, knowing you're a classified employee. I don't know if you've heard of the Classified Employee Teacher Recruitment Grant, but if you want to take down my contact information here and reach out to me at some point, I can give you more information on that.
Thank you. Yes, I actually was writing you an email. I have the confirmation that you sent for the
Perfect.
webinar today.
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Thank you. I definitely want to follow up with that.
Absolutely. There is one thing I should, a couple things I should mention. As far as which districts take on internships, it really just depends on where they are having a hard time filling positions. I will tell you that another grant that's out there is the Local Solutions to the Shortage of Special Ed Teachers grant that actually our office administers. And there are 11 districts who are our partners or grant partners, 11 districts, including SDCOE. So if you were to go through our SPED intern program, your intern program is at no cost to you. The only thing you would pay for is the pre-service, which is $1,000 or $1,200 to $1,200. But the other $10,000, it's $5,000 a year. That's paid for through this grant. So districts who participate in that include some of our more remote districts like, well, not really. Well, Borrego Springs, Warner, Julian High, Julian Elementary, but also Bonsall, Carlsbad, Cajon Valley, San Diego Unified, and Alpine. I hope I got all those. So there are districts that participate. No, not Alpine. Yeah, Alpine, sorry, and Lemon Grove. That's why I was having a hard time there because it's both of them, Alpine and Lemon Grove. They all participate in this Local Solutions grant. Now that's just for special educators.
I have a question. And what is the application process for that grant?
There is no application process for that grant. It's you get an internship with San Diego Unified, and then you go through our intern program.
Okay.
I'm saying San Diego Unified because you work with San Diego Unified. I should say any of those districts, you apply to any of those districts as an intern, and then you would enter into our program. But just remember, you have to be intern eligible to apply for an intern position. And on EdJoin, it doesn't say intern. It's just going to be the position.
Okay, and I'm happy to say I did get accepted into the pre-service.
Perfect. That's perfect. Okay, good. So you are already fully engaged with our intern program.
Yes, and I want to get hired. And I love that you guys are having these webinars to get us on that path.
Thank you. We are glad to hold these webinars. And speaking of webinars, this is not the only way that you can get a hold of us. So please feel free to reach out to myself, Adina, who's not available today, but she is part of all this as well. And she's the one who set up all the webinars. Her contact information is here as well. She's another member of our team. And then of course, Carrie Morgan, who's with us as well. And I'm the odd person out with the weird email address. The rest of us, it's first name dot last name at sdcoe.net. Thanks, Carrie, for putting everybody else's email address there. Anyways, I hope that this was helpful to you, but like I said, please don't hesitate to contact us if you have any questions. We are also going to have a virtual booth at the job fair, and so is our credentials team. Our credentials team is going to have their own booth. So if you have questions about your any type of credentialing, if you're wanting to get a substitute teacher credential, whatever credentialing questions, you can stop by their booth. If you want to find out more about any of our programs, including the couple of grants that I mentioned, you can stop by our booth. We're going to be, I think the title of our booth is something like SDCOE Educator Preparation Programs. And then we're also going to have our recruitment team who does hiring for the County Office of Ed for our own schools. They will have their own booth as well. So all three of us will be there. Well, thank you, everyone. And I am going to stop recording and stop sharing. And we hope to see you on April 7th.
7. Thank you very much for the information.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
And I did send the email.
Oh, great. I will respond to you, if not tonight, tomorrow.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate everything.
You're welcome. Have a great evening.
Thank you.